Welcome back to Beyond 2020 Leadership, the episode where we look beyond today's role, today's title, and today's challenges to develop the leaders we're capable of becoming. I'm Tamara Nord, and today I want to talk about something that I believe separates leaders who continue to grow from leaders who eventually plateau. It's not intelligence, it's not talent, it's not even experience. It's intentional development. Because the truth is, your next level of leadership will not happen by accident. It probably won't happen simply because you've been loyal, and it won't happen because you worked harder than everyone else. And it won't happen just because you have the potential to do more. Potential is important, but potential without intentional development is just possibility. And possibility doesn't create change. So today, we're going to talk about how to take ownership of your own leadership development and create a practical 90-day development plan that moves you forward. Not filled with vague goals like, I want to be more strategic or I want to improve my communication. Those are good intentions. But intentions alone do not create transformation. So today, we're going to make it more specific, more practical, and more personal. Because the most important development plan you will ever own is the one that you create for yourself. So, why great leaders sometimes stop growing? That's what we're going to talk about right now. And I want to start with a question. Why do talented, high-performing leaders sometimes stop growing? It's an interesting question because many times these are the people who have already proven themselves. They have delivered results, they've been promoted, they've earned trust, they've become the person others rely on. And then slowly, something happens. The work becomes more operational, the calendar becomes more crowded, the urgent begins to take over the important. And before they realize it, they are spending all of their time managing today's problems instead of developing tomorrow's capability. And here's the challenge. The skills that got you to your current level are not always the skills that will take you to your next level. You may have been promoted because you were the strongest contributor. But now, your success depends on developing other people. You may have been recognized because you were the person with all the answers. But now, your next level may require you to ask better questions. You may have built your career by being the person who could personally solve every problem. But the next level of leadership may require you to build a team that can solve problems without you. That transition can be uncomfortable because growth often requires us to release some of the behaviors that made us successful in the first place. And that's why self-awareness is so important. You have to be willing to ask, what got me here? What will get me there? And what might I need to stop doing in order to become the leader my next level requires? That is not a question of weakness. That is a question of leadership maturity. The strongest leaders I know are not the people who believe they have arrived. They are the people who remain curious. They continue to ask for feedback. They continue to learn. And they continue to challenge their own thinking. And they understand that leadership development is not something that ends when you receive a title. And in many ways, the title is simply the beginning of the next development challenge. So let's dive into development is a strategic advantage. I want to reframe how we think about professional development. Sometimes development is treated like an event. Think of training or a conference, a book, a leadership program, a performance review. All of those things can be valuable, but real development is not an event. It is a process. And when you approach your development strategically, it becomes a competitive advantage. Think about it this way. Every organization has a strategy. There are goals, priorities, metrics, resources, initiatives. But what is your personal leadership strategy? What capabilities are you intentionally building? And what leadership skill will create the greatest return for you over the next 90 days? Where are you currently underdeveloped? What feedback have you received repeatedly that you may have not fully acted on yet? And perhaps most importantly, what will your next opportunity require from you that your current role does not? That question is powerful because the best time to prepare for your next opportunity is before the opportunity arrives. Don't wait until you get promoted to start acting like the leader the role requires. Start developing those capabilities now. And if you want to lead at a higher level, begin thinking at a higher level. If you want to influence more strategically, begin understanding the business more deeply. And if you want to lead larger teams, begin developing leaders around you. If you want to be considered for a greater responsibility, begin demonstrating the capability before you have the title. This is how you become the obvious choice, not by waiting for someone to discover your potential, by intentionally developing the capability your next opportunity requires. There are 4 areas of leadership development. So how do we actually create a development plan? I like to think about leadership development through those 4 areas. First is self-awareness. The second is strategic capability. The third is influence and relationships. And the fourth is sustainable performance. So let's talk about each one. Self-awareness is the foundation of leadership. It is understanding how you show up, how you communicate, how you respond under pressure, what triggers you, what motivates you, where are you at when you're your strongest, and perhaps most importantly, where are your blind spots? Because your intent is not always the same as your impact. You may intend to be direct. Someone else may experience you as dismissive. You may intend to move quickly, and someone else may experience you as impatient. You may believe you are giving someone autonomy, and they may experience it as a lack of support. The gap between intent and impact is where some of the greatest leadership growth can happen. So one of the most powerful development questions you can ask is, what is it like to be led by me? That's a challenging question, but it's one worth asking. The second area is strategic capability. As leaders, as they progress, the questions become bigger. It's no longer just, how do I get today's work done? The questions become, why are we doing this? What is the larger impact? What patterns are we seeing? What are we preparing for? And what is the risk of doing nothing? And perhaps the most important question, what should I be focusing on that will make the greatest difference? Leadership growth often means moving from activity to impact, from being busy to being effective, from managing tasks to creating capacity. And sometimes the most strategic thing you can do is to stop doing something that no longer creates value. The third area is influence. Leadership is not simply about having authority. In fact, some of the most important leadership moments happen when you have no formal authority at all. You have to create alignment. You have to build trust. You have to listen. And you have to understand what matters to other people. You have to communicate in a way that connects the vision to something meaningful for them. Influence is not manipulation. Influence is understanding. It's being able to say, here is where we are going, and here is why it matters. And here is how we are going to get there together. The fourth area is sustainable performance. Because leadership is not a sprint where you continually sacrifice your health, your relationships, your energy, and in your personal life in order to achieve the next goal. This is not sustainable leadership. Your energy is a leadership resource. Your attention is a leadership resource. Your ability to think clearly is a leadership resource. And if you consistently operate from exhaustion, you are eventually going to make decisions from depletion instead of intention. So sustainable performance means understanding what gives you energy, what drains your energy, where you are spending time that does not create meaningful value. What should you delegate? What should you eliminate? What do you need to protect? You don't need to develop all four of these areas at the same time. And in fact, I would argue that trying to improve everything at once is one of the fastest ways to make no meaningful progress at all. So choose one. Focus deeply, practice consistently, and then build from there. Sounds easy. So let's talk about designing your 90-day leadership sprint. And we're going to make it practical. I want you to think about the next 90 days, not the next 5 years, not your entire career, just the next 90 days. 90 days is long enough to create meaningful progress, but short enough to maintain focus and accountability. I like to think about 90-day development sprint in 4 phases. So phase 1, we have a baseline. The first 2 weeks are about understanding where you are today. Because before you can create a meaningful development plan, you need an honest starting point. Ask yourself, what are you doing well? Where are you struggling? And what feedback have you received more than once? What leadership situations consistently challenge you? And then ask a few people you trust. What is one thing I could do that would make me more effective as a leader? And when you ask that question, here's the important part. Do not explain, do not defend, and do not immediately tell them what you do. Just listen. You don't have to agree with every piece of feedback, but you should be curious about it. Because sometimes the feedback we most want to reject is the feedback that contains the greatest opportunity for growth. And at the end of those first 2 weeks, identify one development theme, not 5, 1. From there, we're going to work on building the skill. Weeks 3 through 6 are about building the skill. Let's say your development area is influence. Your goal might be, I will ask 2 additional questions before offering my own solution in leadership conversations. Or perhaps your development area is strategic thinking. Your weekly action might be, I will spend 30 minutes each week reviewing the broader business trends impacting my team and identifying one strategic implication. Or maybe your development area is executive presence. Your action might be, I will slow down my communication, lead with the headline, and be more intentional about how I present recommendations. The key is to translate the development goal into a visible behavior, because you cannot measure be more strategic, but you can measure I will spend 30 minutes every Friday reviewing the data and identifying 3 patterns. You cannot measure improved communication, but you can measure I will ask for feedback after my next 3 presentations. The smaller and more specific the behavior, the more likely you are to practice it consistently. So now let's apply the skill. Weeks 7 through 10 are about application. And this is where development becomes real. Take the skill into a situation that stretches you. Have the difficult conversation. Lead the meeting. Present the recommendation. Ask the question you normally avoid. Delegate the responsibility you would typically keep for yourself. Take the capability you have been practicing and put it into a higher stakes environment. Because you don't develop leadership in theory. You develop leadership in moments. Then, in weeks 11 and 12, you review. You're going to be able to ask, what changed? What did I learn? What became easier? What still feels uncomfortable? What feedback am I receiving now? What impact did this development have on my team, my relationships, or my results? And then you choose your next development sprint. Because leadership development is not a one-time project. It's a rhythm. You assess, you focus, you practice, you apply, you reflect, and then you begin again. So 3 questions to use this week. Before I close, I want to give you those 3 questions that you can use immediately. Question 1. What is my current leadership edge? Your leadership edge is the capability that, if developed, could create greater impact for you right now. It might be communication, delegation, strategic thinking, business acumen, emotional intelligence, conflict management, executive presence, or the ability to develop other leaders. What's yours? Question 2. What does my next level require? Not what does my current job require? What does the next level require? What will you need to know? How will you need to think? How will you need to communicate? What will you need to stop doing? And what will you need to start doing consistently? This question helps you begin preparing before the opportunity arrives. Question 3. What is one behavior I can practice for the next 30 days? Not 10 behaviors, one. What is the behavior that, if repeated consistently, could begin changing how you lead? Maybe it's pausing before responding. Maybe it's asking better questions. Maybe it's giving more timely feedback. Maybe it's delegating instead of recusing. And maybe it's maybe it's spending more time thinking strategically. Just choose one. Practice it. Track it. Ask for feedback. Pay attention to the impact. Your development is your responsibility. So here's the challenge I want to leave you with. Do not wait for your organization to create your next development opportunity. Do not wait for your manager to tell you what to work on. Do not wait for the promotion to begin preparing for the role. Take ownership of your development. Identify your next leadership edge. Choose one capability, create a 90-day sprint, and begin. Because the leaders who continue to grow are not necessarily the people who have all the answers. They are the people who remain willing to ask better questions of themselves. They understand that leadership is not a destination. It is a practice. And every day you are either intentionally developing the leader you want to become, or you're simply repeating the leadership habits you've already have. So what is your next 90-day leadership sprint? What is one capability that you are going to intentionally develop? Who is going to hold you accountable? Because your next level will not happen by accident. It will happen because you decided it mattered enough to develop it. Thank you for joining me for Beyond 2020 Leadership. If this episode resonated with you, share it with another leader who is committed to growing intentionally. And remember, you don't have to wait for the next opportunity to become the leader it requires. Start developing that leader today. And until next time, keep looking beyond today, and I'll see you next week.